Should you really be photoshopping your wildlife images? That's a controversial question. A lot of people who have traveled with me on safari ask me that why do you need to edit your pictures? Why do you need to post-process them? Can't you just keep the scene natural? Well, like I said, it's a debatable question. And that's why I decided to have a conversation with Aman Wilson, Nikon's technical officer and a fantastic wildlife photographer whose work has been published in many national and international magazines. So I thought this is a person who's probably going to shed a little bit of light on whether we really need to be editing or post-processing those wildlife images. As always, I decided to put the questions I asked of Aman down in the description below, so you can actually refer back whenever you want to in this video. A request: if you do enjoy this conversation, do hit that like button. And if you'd like to know more on India's wildlife and wildlife photography, please do subscribe to our channel. So here we go, guys. Enjoy the video. So guys, formal welcome to this session that we're actually having with today is editing or post-processing of wildlife images necessary. And for that, I think there would be no better person to actually, discuss this with than Aman Wilson. The reason I'm actually, I really wanted to do this session with Aman was that I personally believe that the sort of aesthetics that are there with post-processing and editing of wildlife images, Aman actually, exhibits these beautifully in his work, which I believe. Of course, Aman is a Nikon technical officer. He's a photographer. He's even a trained pilot, so he's worn many hats. But I actually love his work that he actually does with wildlife as well. And I think he's the right person to kind of probably address this question today if it's really necessary to edit these images. So Aman, before we jump into this, I think there's one sort of aspect of it which I think is very important for photographers to understand whether we edit images or we don't edit images, and that is to do with the file format of what our cameras actually shoot. Primarily, there are two options that we get on our cameras. We can either shoot a JPEG, so to speak, and a RAW format. So maybe just quickly address us with a few quick introductions on what these two formats basically mean.
Okay, so first of all, the things I want to touch base is that when we talk about editing, let's not get into the editing part. First, we need to understand that as a photographer, editing comes in a very later stage in your career. And if you start editing right from the beginning, then what happens is you hamper your growth as a photographer because you start going towards digital. Generally, even when I started off, I also started to tweak my images, but then I understood that as soon as you start doing it, you play around with the colors and you miss out the aesthetic part of that picture. So rather than doing editing right in the beginning, you should concentrate more on the camera because there's so much that you can squeeze out of the camera that you don't need to rely on editing. But when we start talking about commercial value and when we start talking about becoming more professional, that's where when you are starting to exhibit your work, that's where you need to edit your pictures. And slowly and steadily, you find a space for yourself in the editing area as well. That yes, this is something which is what you can be defined as. So that's something which is very much crucial in the beginning stages of our photography journey. So this is something which a lot of photographers miss out on, and they start with the editing part, which really impacts them badly.
So what you're basically saying is that, especially when we are starting with wildlife photography, and that's what we'll try and focus on in the session, you're saying that I think initially, if we don't keep so much focusing on editing or post-processing, we actually shoot without, thinking that we'll be editing or post-processing these pictures. That cultivates a level of discipline. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Exactly. Right. Because see, the thing is that be it any camera, whatever genre you're using as in shooting and whatever camera you're using, whatever brand it is, at the end of the day, the basics are something which will always make you stand out. And I always abide by this fundamental thing because unless you concentrate on those basics, unless you concentrate on the shooting part of it, you will never be able to understand the camera. See, the camera is a part of your body and you should know it like the back of your hand. So editing, yes, it's very important, very crucial, but then again, it comes at a very later stage in your life. In the beginning phase, you should really understand like what are the things in the camera and how does one needs to use them and manipulate them to get the best use out of it. So this is something which you can concentrate on. Now, coming back to the topic of editing also, like you were asking. So generally your camera shells you out a JPEG picture and a RAW file. Now, a lot of people have this thing that should we shoot JPEGs or should we shoot RAW or what should we do? See, basically, why this JPEG is given in the camera, because it's basically an image which is ready right out of the camera. And as a beginner, as a consumer, when you start using a camera, the manufacturers want that you should have something which is directly out of the camera and you can start playing around with it and you can start exhibiting it or showcasing it or sharing with your friends or family. So that's where the JPEG comes into play, and JPEG is a compressed file. So that's where you see the file size of a JPEG is like 1/3 or half the size of a RAW file at times, depending upon whichever camera model you have. So it totally depends upon that. Now, when we talk about a RAW file, so RAW file is basically data, where when you look at a RAW file, it looks very dull, it looks very flat, but actually it has a lot of value, it has a lot of size also. And if you compare, like for example, if your JPEG is 5 MB, then approximately your RAW file could be about 20-25 MB or something. Absolutely. So the same image has so much scope of editing on it. Now, when we talk about things like white balance, when we talk about things like your exposure, when you talk about your picture control and playing around with certain colors, and all these things, you are able to do it in a RAW file. But when you talk about a JPEG, you are not able to play around with all these things. Like a hair, so these are black, right? You have a lot of contrast in them. But now, if you want to play around with those blacks, you will not be able to do that in a RAW, in a JPEG file. But whereas a RAW allows you to play around with it. When you talk about,
would you say that the JPEG, I mean, in a very, very simplistic term, the JPEG is actually, if you're talking about editing or processing, post-processing of images, the JPEG is sort of a processed form of, what we captured on camera. It's an output of the camera that is given like a post-processed sort of version. Would you say that?
Yes, definitely. It's straight coming out of the camera. You can just use it. You can share it with the technology today, and it's readily available for you. So whatever settings you do are pasted on that picture, and you get the output then and there. Now, similarly, you can do a output of a JPEG through a RAW file also, because RAW, again, like I said, can be able to produce a TIFF file, a PSD file, a RAW file, a JPEG file, depending upon what your need is all about. So you can choose whatever format you want to do, and obviously while you're starting off as a photographer, you start shooting with a JPEG, but eventually as you grow, you start understanding the use of RAW and you start shooting RAW. Like if you ask me, I've been shooting, I shoot a JPEG as well as a RAW file. So I choose a JPEG basic file because your camera shells out three formats of it, which is a basic, a normal, and a fine. And basic being the smallest quality. So I choose that because at times as a photographer, when you are in the field, when you're shooting, there's variation of light, there's different angles of light. And when you shoot so much in length for many days at a stretch, so what happens is at times you don't recollect that what sort of type of lighting
was the moment was at that point of time.
Yeah. And when you sit with your RAW file, at times you are clueless. Oh, how do I edit this out? So that's where I feel personally that having a RAW file as a reference is very important. So it's okay because memory is enough, and in today's time, it's very, I would say, cheap to buy a memory card, right? So you can have n number of memory cards with you, and you can still have a RAW file and a JPEG file as well.
So, Aman, just to come to that as well, what you talked about that, so JPEG obviously is, according to the camera, the software is running an algorithm, and according to that, it's giving you an output of what the image of the scene was. Similarly, RAW is basically data capture. We are just getting lots of data to play with, and then, of course, it's up to us to kind of, replicate the scene or show the image in format. So, in a sense, you would say that probably the JPEG version of it is a little more automated as in terms of the final output that you get, whereas the RAW element of it, when you actually get a final output of the image, there's more manual inputs of it that actually go in when actually you get the final output, right?
Definitely, because when you're playing with a RAW file, then there's a lot of artistic value which you can throw into it and make your pictures very different or more sort of fine art or anything, whatever you want to play around with. Like, but then again, that comes with experience and that comes with time. So that's a different case altogether. But yes, I would say playing with RAW is more essential than playing with a JPEG.
Absolutely. So, Aman, just to come to that, you talked about how you can actually process these images for fine art, etc., all of those as well. There's often a term that actually gets bandied about a lot that, hey, that photograph looks edited, or hey, that photograph looks photoshopped. This is something that, I wanted to kind of really address during the session as well. Because obviously the camera, of course, can give you a good output as a JPEG image as well. And we talked about what the benefits of raw images are, not a raw image rather, but an output of the raw that you actually get as an image, how that also adds value. So to actually take that further ahead, do you believe that as a photographer, a lot of photographers, in fact, certain photographers I've met have mentioned this, that, hey, you know what, I'm shooting JPEG and, I'm fine with that because RAW takes up a lot of space and, then you have to sit and post-process every image. So either these are things I'm sure you've heard before. But yeah, what do you what are your opinions on this? Then when people actually say this, that, hey, I should focus on JPEG, there's really no need to shoot RAW. What's your opinion on that?
Don't tell me. I've had these questions, I would say, a million times, and this generally happens with every type of genre which is out there. So since I conduct workshops for multiple genres, so this is a very common question which comes up to me, that because the space is cramped up when you shoot in RAW, so we should shoot in JPEG itself. But I would say that's not the case. Out of all the genres, landscape, wedding, wildlife, sports, I've shot everything but landscape, wedding. I have never had a time. I don't recollect a time where I had weddings unless it was my own fault or something. But I have never ran out of space because I've always kept multiple cards with me and I shoot RAW. And this is something I know we are going out of topic of wildlife, but a lot of wedding photographers come up to me and tell me we don't have the time to shoot RAW files, so it's better to shoot JPEGs. So my answer to that is, how are you saying that? Because me as a wildlife photographer in the field, shooting multiple frames when there's action and everything, and I'm still shooting RAW, and I still don't miss a shot. So if I have to shoot a wedding or something, it just doesn't matter because it's a controlled environment. So basically, when you're out in the field, it's very easy to shoot RAW itself and not just concentrate on shooting JPEG. Now, if I tell you that in the camera we have something which is also a RAW large, a RAW small, and a RAW medium available, depending upon again the brand and the camera which you have. So you can choose from. If you're running out of space, basically, so you can go to a smaller RAW file and you can still end up with a RAW file rather than ending up with a JPEG file. So in a wildlife situation, when you're out there, so the angle changes, the light changes very drastically and very quickly. You are shooting in one direction, but you hear something right at the back and you switch and you want to shoot. So that's where the power of the RAW comes into play. Because you might have captured that shot. The shot might be, I would say, sharp. It might be properly composed and everything, but the exposure is completely off. But with the power of RAW today, which the cameras are capable of handling, like I'm using a D850, that's my primary body. So I'm able to control up to 4 stops of light, plus and minus. And I would say even more than that, but I don't shoot that bad. So, so that's the thing. So the thing is that the RAW gives you so much of space to shoot while you are there, to edit when you have made a mistake. So
absolutely, I think that's very important in wildlife photography, because absolutely you nailed it on the head when you said this, that when you're actually shooting wildlife, so much of it is unpredictable. You absolutely nailed it when you said that, you're looking at something, you're shooting something, and suddenly out of nowhere there's another subject that comes along and you have to shoot it because it's going to disappear. So the thing is, you're absolutely right in the sense when you shoot RAW, it then gives you a certain amount of flexibility as well, and especially in a field like wildlife where your subjects are often unpredictable and will behave in such a way. I think that's very important what you've talked about. Now, coming to the fact of when we were actually taking that, okay, we have a subject control with a RAW, but then when you get that control with a RAW, you can then decide on how you want to make an image. Do you
Right.
want to actually make an image similar to what you saw? Hey, this is what my eyes saw at that point of time, and I'll probably want to process it. And then you see a lot of this work being put out there as well right now, where a lot of people are using creativity and kind of infusing images with something different, and that's of course inclusive of wildlife subjects. So you're seeing this editing and post processing of image happening for fine art as well. Now, the question I want to ask is with relation to the fine art of it or the creative images. According to you, Aman, and it's of course a very subjective question, but are there boundaries to how much you can really push an image in terms of creativity? Or you believe that it's a photographer's own aesthetics of what an image looks like? Or what's your opinion on this?
Well, definitely, see, it's an open field. You can do whatever you want to do with your image, because at the end of the day, the picture which you clicked should make you happy. That's the end result. That's the conclusion. But now, when I talk about, if I talk about going in stages, like when I started off, I wanted to shoot just with the camera, just get the outputs, and just play around with that. Now, till date, if you ask me, I actually don't know the P of Photoshop. Okay, I still don't know how to do a lot of things on it, but my main emphasis is to play on the ACR. That's where I play around with a little bit of my exposures, my
ACR,
slides.
Just for the viewers who are new to this, ACR
Adobe Camera Raw.
that Aman is talking about is Adobe Camera Raw. Please go on. That's a raw processor, the raw file processor.
Yeah, so I just play around with a certain tweaking my exposure, a little bit of color here and there with the contrast or something to get a final print which makes me happy. That's how I started off. Now after that, I adopted. Then you expand, you become better. You started editing. Now when I go back and look at my 5-year-old picture, I'm like, no, today if I want to edit, it'll be completely different. So you grow as a photographer, and your artistic values also change. Now, in today's time when I'm doing it, so if you see, there's a different pattern of pictures which I've picked up, and I'm playing more with the light. And specifically when I'm shooting in the wild, I push myself so that the quality which I'm looking for comes out, and I only shoot when it's very late in the evening or very early morning, and I try to get my subjects during that time, be it a bird or be it a tiger or anything, because I know at that point of time I'm gonna get that trim, I'm gonna get that backlight, I'm gonna have that nice angles of light where I can play around with a lot of things. And now if you see, recently from the previous week onwards, I've been posting these different fine art type of pictures,
a lot of
low-key images, yeah. So that's where I'm playing with my editing skills. Now a lot of people have asked me,
again, guys, just to kind of help out with this. Low-key images that we're actually discussing is where the background of the subject can often be quite dark while the subject is illuminated by natural light, or in this case what Aman's images that we're talking about. So that's what a low-key image is, a dark background with the subject illuminated, and the high-key image is the opposite, where you have a bright white background as well, and of course the subject is well lighted as well. Please go on, Aman.
Definitely. So now these things, like a low-key image which I've been doing and I've been posting, like this one which just came up. Okay, so this one, so if you ask me, I can create this in the field also. So when you are early morning shooting, I was recently at Bharatpur, I have an egret shot which I might be posting in soon. So the light was just falling on the face. So you just expose for that light and you cut out the rest of the light. So you get a picture where it's exactly the same low-key shot. So it's just about understanding the light and playing with it. So the fine art part also is perfectly fine. There's no boundary, and photography is not bound by any rules or something. But then again, I would say in order to develop these skills, it's better to firstly understand what you're doing, build up your portfolio, and then start doing the editing part, and then start becoming more into the artistic or the fine art part of it. So if you start right from the beginning, then you don't understand the aesthetics of the picture, you don't understand the aesthetics of the light, because you need to know how the light is coming into your picture, and that's where the difference comes in. That's where you see a lot of I wouldn't name, but there's a lot of famous wildlife photographers out there whom we all follow, and we see their work and we appreciate it, because now they've reached up to a level where okay, normal pictures are already with them, so now they're trying to create something which is very different and which is more unique. So in order to make yourself stand out alone, your editing also plays a vital role because it shows your own signature. That this is what defines Aman, or this is what defines Shashank. So that's where you can play around with the boundaries of photography, you can play around with the boundaries of editing, but then again see your progress, where you stand, and are you actually at that point or not.
You talked about. I think the same logic of what you talked about, that, it's probably a good idea to kind of, first focus on the field, getting those images right on the field, exposing for your subjects properly, etc. Get those things right. Spend some time doing that, and perhaps from that, discipline of actually getting those images, getting those exposures right, and seeing that many scenes of the natural world, where you've now spent enough time in the wild to know, what can look natural and what can look maybe not that great. I think it's a question of spending time, what you're talking about in both of these cases.
Definitely.
So yeah. Okay, I mean, also just to kind of ask another question, and of course I was expecting this question, obviously, but we did get it from a fair number of people as well. Which are the sort of applications for post-processing or editing of photographs? You more of them as well.
Sure. So since I'm a Nikon user, and I have been using. So in the beginning, I've been using the that's more of easier software to learn and understand. From there on, you can proceed on to Capture NXD. So Capture NXD is where you want to batch process your pictures or give in a more advanced type of editing to it. But yes, at the end of the day, you always turn your head towards Photoshop or Lightroom, depending upon your usability. But Photoshop has been there in the market for quite some time. And people, the scope of editing which you get in Photoshop is just phenomenal. So there's no end to it. Whatever you can do in a picture, even today when I look at certain things which people do in Photoshop, I'm amazed. So Lightroom is something which is very easy and people rely on.
An issue. Aman, just I think there's a bit of an issue. Losing you in between. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah. Your voice is absolutely clear.
No, I think we just lost you for a few frames there. Yes, you would. Sorry, just to kind of reiterate, you were talking about Photoshop and the sort of power it has in terms of processing.
Right. So I would say I'm an old school person. So from the time I started editing, I started off with V1XI. I went on to Capture NXD. I still use them at times because I have to showcase them in a certain way and in my workshops and all. So if you're a beginner, if you're trying to understand what is editing all about, then jumping onto Lightroom or jumping onto Photoshop is not a wise decision, because there's so much of tools which are there at your disposal, so you will not understand the use of it. So it's better to start from a smaller software like these if you're a Nikon user, and obviously if you're any other camera owner, then you can use those company softwares which are available. And you can then grow onto these Lightrooms and Photoshop and accordingly choose wherever you're more comfortable to play around with.
I'd probably also suggest, since some of the questions were asked about editing on camera and editing on phone, of course, all of these softwares, Lightroom, Photoshop, etc., you have express versions of them available on your app stores as well. Another good app which I've also found pretty good to use is Snapseed, which is Google's app for image editing as well. Yeah. Aman, do you also use it?
Yeah, definitely. But I don't use it on my images. I generally use it on all the pictures which I take from the phone. So Snapseed has been there from a long time, and people still aren't aware about it. It's a beautiful application to use, definitely, and very easy to understand also. As far as other applications like Lightroom, you have a cross-platform between the phone and your iPad or your MacBook or something or the other. You can just save your image anywhere, and then you can use it anywhere else as well. So it's. And similarly, when I talk about in-camera, obviously these days, so like Nikon cameras, I would say all the Nikon cameras have something which is known as NEF processing. So RAW files for different manufacturers are different. So in Nikon, it's NEF, Nikon Electronic Format, and you have a processing software within the camera itself. So you can choose how to edit a picture and make it ready then and there. And if you want to share it with any of your clients or on your basically SNS platforms, then definitely you can use the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth which is available.
Yeah, there are, of course, I think now most camera platforms also offer this where you can pretty much now directly transfer even a JPEG format of your RAW file. And probably just there's a small format image JPEG file that you can directly export to your phone, and then maybe just in case you want to upload something right away, you can kind of use a Wi-Fi connection if your camera has an inbuilt one, and then just transfer the file straight away to your phone and edit it and put it across. Super. And also, so Aman, just to finally come. Of course, Nikon can do RAW.
No, I'm saying Nikon can even transfer RAW.
No. So just to kind of, because I think the issue is that a lot of people, in case I want small formats, I don't have a lot of space on my phone, I want to transfer it quickly. This is something that I've also used in the past. I've not in fact transferred RAWs directly from the camera to the phone, but this is something that even I had used when I had transferred images, and automatically confirms. Also, I want to just to also now come to working on. Now, of course, your work has been shared by a variety of platforms. It's been published in a variety of magazines as well. A lot of people, I'm sure, want to kind of understand that, what's your general style, or, I'm sure many of the people are already aware of a workflow that goes through in the images when they're post-processing those images. But maybe just quickly, if you could give a few highlights on, what are the basic things to take care of when you're doing a post-processing workflow on any of your images? Because you obviously have this experience of now getting published as well on multiple platforms.
Okay. So if you ask me, my personal style is I don't like a lot of bright images. I prefer to go for low-key images unless it's required. Otherwise, I'll try to bring down the exposure. And I like to play around with the light, because the way I shot the picture, I generally try to showcase it in the same fashion. Now, as far as color is concerned, a lot of people go for by saturating the pictures. Again, this is something which is very personal. I again prefer to go for those faded looks. I again try to go to more authentic looks if possible. So that's where I concentrate more on. And I want to showcase the colors as they are. I try to do that. And then I try to bring in a little bit of fade just to give that sort of a feel to the picture. And this is mostly, the fading part is mostly when I'm doing it for Instagram or something. But apart from that, when if there are any prints which are required, or if I'm putting it up on a website, or if it's required for a magazine, then I try to go as authentic as possible, just the way it was, because then the masses are seeing it, so it's very important to showcase the subject the way it is. A lot of people have not seen that subject, and they will be able to recognize that picture somewhere later when they look at it. So it's very important to keep those authentic colors as much as possible.
Sure. Any pointers that you'd like to give to specifically on this? Is because I've seen quite a few images like this that tend to get rejected because of these reasons. One is what you talked about. Of course, oversaturation is one problem. What about sharpening as well? I think that's something that a lot of people are very keen on doing.
Right.
So maybe
sharpening is something I don't touch. I don't the way pictures definitely. I stay away from that, because again, like, you're wearing glasses. If I sharpen out your picture, so what will happen is your glasses will come out very sharp, and then everything looks very unnatural. If I'm not able to see that sharpness with my own eyes, then what's the use of showcasing it in the pictures? Because then it's just, again, taking the picture away from its authentic look. So sharpening, you want to do it up to a certain extent if you really have to do it, because at times the subject is too far away and you crop it and then you want to do it. So for those purposes, it's okay, but don't over sharpen it and make it very unnatural.
Perfect. I think that's mostly it, Anuman. I don't think we have any further questions. Yes, I think that's pretty much all the questions that we had received. So thanks, Aman, for actually doing this session today for us. I think it's going to be of great value to people. And of course, like I said, a lot of people who are new to photography, who feel that, you really shouldn't be editing your images or, using them or putting them in Photoshop. I think this session will be very, very valuable for them, and will give them a bit of an introduction on what to look for, how even nature photographers should approach processing going forward. Thanks for taking making out the time to do this in this
No,
particular
thanks
scenario.
a ton. Thanks for pushing me to do this. I've been escaping to come live for quite some time. But thanks, Shashank, for having me on your channel. It was great interacting with you, and I hope the viewers also enjoyed it. And soon we'll be doing further more sessions, and let's see. So take care of all of you. Stay home, stay safe, and enjoy with your
Absolutely.
families and friends. Take care, man.
Yes. All right, guys. Cheers. Thank you for tuning into the session today. As always, I'll try and make the video session available to you later as well, so you can refer it back. But thanks for tuning in. And like Aman said, please stay safe. Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you.